I have a question for you this morning. Are you innovative? Are you specifically innovative? Or maybe we could say it, is your organization innovative? I know it's early in the morning, but I want to give you a little quiz. I'm going to show you 5 products. We're going to start with Post-it notes, sweet and low. We're going to go with Roundup, Play-Doh, and my personal favorite, Men's Rogaine. Obviously, Rogaine came out too early to help me, but I'm too sexy for my hair. Anyway, so what do these products have in common? Anybody? What do these products have in common? Anybody? What? Brand recognition. A lot of these have a brand recognition. Great answer, not the one I'm looking for. Anyone else? Yes? They were invented as a result of a mistake, or we might say they were invented by accident, right? Accident. So these inventors, these folks were working on something, and then as a result of their activities came up with these products, right? So Roundup, what were they working on to try and make when they came up with Roundup? As it turns out, they were working on a solution to make plants grow faster. Wow, big miss, right? As it turns out, it works. Roundup makes plants grow so fast that they can't get enough nutrients from the soil and they die. And so they spent years trying to slow it down, couldn't figure out how to do it, and then someone's like, aha, we can use this as a weed killer, right? What about Men's Rogaine? When they were working on something, what were they trying to invent when they came up with Men's Rogaine? They were trying to lower blood pressure in men. So they're giving these guys this foam to, rub on themselves to see if they would lower their blood pressure, which didn't work at all, but then they started growing hair. Okay, let's go that way, right? So the point is that all of these organizations and individuals were busy working on something. They were looking for and acting in an innovative way when they came up with this accident or mistake. So the idea is that we have to be in a spirit of innovation. We have to be thinking about innovation, and innovation can have tremendous impacts on our organization. If each one of us would individually think innovatively each day, the power, the magnification of that is huge. Let me just give you one quick example. These are 2 companies. We recognize them. The one on the left is Microsoft, and on the right, Apple. All right, now let's go back to 2004. Microsoft was 3 times the size of Apple. Apple was this small little nascent, if 8.8 billion could be a little small nascent company, but Microsoft really considered itself to be the dominant player from a technology standpoint. What happened in 2004? Steve Jobs started working on iPods, and then iPhones, and then iPads, and then the new MacBooks, and on and on. A spirit of innovation. The way that they changed our very lives swept through that company, such that when you look at their last published year, Microsoft has grown great. I'm not trying to poo-poo Microsoft, but look at the impact of innovation on Apple. Now, you're sitting here going, okay, great, David, that's Apple. We're at a small organization. We're not in that kind of mode. Let me give you a quick story. Years ago, I'm at a small financial institution, just there a few months. Didn't really know much about financial institutions, but I had some technology background. And so I'm working in the computer area, and they had come out with a product at that time called Fedline. And this was a connection between the Federal Reserve Bank and this little small community bank. So I go in there to work on Fedline, and as it turns out, it was like a cluster of a process, right, to figure out. So you have this computer that has a special modem that talks to the Fed. And then this one I had to actually transfer to another computer, which then turned around, and then I had to sneakernet and move this to get it over to process to our mainframe computer. It was a mess. And so all the time, people would wind up forgetting to actually do the process to move files that represented all the direct deposits and direct payments for that day, and nobody got updated. And then somebody would do it twice, right? And I'm thinking, there's got to be a better, I can fix this. And so I came up with this idea that I could actually create a little program that would just automate all of those steps and put the reminders in place for people to actually know that this had been done properly. And I put it into place, and it worked beautifully. We never had any more mistakes. A few months later, Mr. Tom Kalina from the Federal Reserve of Atlanta came by to visit me, and I showed him my little program. He's like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. He says, well, can you give me a copy of that? I'd love to share that with some others. And I said, sure. So I go to the computer and I actually make a little backup and I give Tom the copy on a 5 1/4 inch floppy. Some of you have never seen one of these before. You can go look at them in the museum. They make a nice coaster. So Tom took my 5 1/4 inch floppy, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting at my desk 6 months later, and I get a call from a banker in upstate Georgia. Mr. Peterson, yes, this is Sue from Central Bank of Swainsboro. We have your program here, but we didn't get the documentation. Could you send that to us? And oh, by the way, we'd like to suggest some enhancements. My program? Completely forgot about it. Then I remembered, the 5 1/4 inch floppy, right? And so I didn't know this, but Tom Kalina was going all over the 6th District of the Federal Reserve giving banks this little program. And it turned out to be just the thing that all of these financial institutions needed in order for them to properly process transactions. And that became the genesis of a company called Goldleaf Technologies, which went on to have over 2,500 financial institution clients in the United States. Now, that happened because of 2 reasons. Number one, I was looking to be innovative. I was looking for ways where I was to be innovative. Number 2, I had a CEO, Bobby Wetherington, who encouraged innovation. He was actively saying, hey, we should be looking about how we streamline, and was very interested in finding ways that we could actually improve, and was very entrepreneurial to allow us to start this company, right? So because of those 2 factors, that one little small little incident on a 5 1/4 inch floppy turned into this huge opportunity and company called Goldleaf Technologies. I'm telling you that each one of you in this room today has opportunities for that type of innovation-driven growth. You can do it. You can do it. I want to talk to you about this idea of thinking about how we think. I call it metacognition. But we've got to think about how we think. We get to the point where we sort of get grounded into a routine, and so we've got to really focus on this idea of how can we break out, how can we look for these accidents, how can we be prepared for innovation. There's really 3 things that I want to talk about, and I'll share them with you today. Number 1 is we're going to need to identify when our brains are in autopilot mode. When are we in autopilot? Number 2, we're going to talk about incorporating think time, how we actually use creative thinking to actually generate innovative ideas. And number 3, to initiate thoughtful response, how we actually put that into play in a way that actually gets the outcomes that we want. All right, so let's talk about these in turn. Let's talk about autopilot. Autopilot. How many decisions do you make in a day? The average human being, how many decisions do you make a day? Just call them out. What do you think? Well, how many decisions? How many? A lot? How many decisions? Thousands? Thousands. Anyone? 623. See, this is somebody who knows how to play The Price is Right. Right? As it turns out, scientists have discovered that we make 35,000 decisions every day. Sounds more real for you now, right? As it turns out, about 90% of those decisions are subconscious. So we're not really thinking about those decisions. So there's really about 3,500 conscious decisions that we're making every day. And this makes sense. Cornell University studied and found out that we make 227 decisions every day just about food. So, you can see how they would add up pretty quickly, right? So one of the things that we need to understand is that your brain is separated into 2 halves. You have a left brain and a right brain. I know you guys know about the hemispheres of the brain, but what you need to understand is the left brain is logic. The left brain is reason. The left brain is analytic. It's the one that actually knows all the facts and figures and so forth. The right brain is imagination. The right brain is creativity, right? And so you have these 2 brains, both of them with these very specific tasks. And as it turns out, the left brain is a bully. Doesn't ever let the right brain come out and play. The right brain is saying, oh, I want to boom, the left brain's always, it's that kid in school, raise your hand, I know the answer, and you didn't get your hand up fast enough. That's the left brain, right? So we have this situation where you're not aware of the fact of your brain going into autopilot. Let me just try this with you. I want all of you to respond with me. I want you to say this out loud, real loud. Spell this for me. Spell the word silk. S-I-L-K. What does a cow drink? Who said, oh my God? Who said that? You see? Your brain is on autopilot. Because what I did is I made you spell the word silk, right? So that puts silk in your brain. And then I asked you, what does a cow drink? And when you think of a cow, you think of milk. And then I said silk, so that even makes it easier for you to come up with milk. I know that you know that cows drink water. My point is that every day within the institution, every day, you are going through your processes and your procedures. You have these things that you do that are these 8-step processes, this 5-step process. There's this thing that you do, and you do it over and over and over and over again. Perhaps in your career, you've done some of these things literally thousands of times. And that brings into effect something that I call the numbing effect of routine. That because you do this so often, you're really not that aware about these opportunities where some type of innovation could occur. You're just sort of doing the thing that your left brain is telling you to do next. Now, let me give you an example of this. The company that I talked about earlier, Goldleaf, started to grow, and it had literally hundreds and hundreds of banks using an online system where the bank's customers were using it to create their direct deposit and direct debit transactions. And one day, on a Wednesday in 2005, the system just started slowing down. And it didn't really crash, it just kind of went into what we would call a death spiral. It just kept getting slower and slower, and people were getting frustrated because it looked like it was down, so they would cancel their sessions and reinitiate another session, which exacerbated the problem. And so we, of course, as a software company, we went immediately to work on trying to figure out what is this, what is this thing? What's causing it? Whatever. So we looked at things like memory overwrites. Is the internet, our connection to the internet slow? What are all the things that could cause this? And we quickly eliminated all of those things. And so we said, hey, we got a software bug, right? Hey, we're a software company, right? If you're a software company, a bug is a nail, and we beat a hammer. We're going to go find this bug, okay? So we go to work on it, and sure enough, we find this bug, and we say, oh my gosh, I can't believe we had this bug in the software. We go in, fix it, test it, put it into play. Thursday comes, system runs beautifully. Whew. Man, we dodged a bullet there. We were feeling so good. We're just such a great software company. Until Tuesday afternoon, death spiral started again. What? We fixed that bug. So now we go look at, we found another bug. We fixed that. Wednesday, everything was fine. Friday, death spiral. What? Bug fixed. Tuesday, death spiral. This went on for weeks. I had presidents of financial institutions on the phone screaming in my ear, trying to, why don't you go to your backup site? You know what a backup site is good for? When the front system, the first system, isn't working. If your software is going in a death spiral, guess what happens when you go to the backup system? It goes in a death spiral. So that wasn't a fix for us. But everyone was frustrated and mad and upset. Finally, I called a guy that I knew had a lot of programming and database experience, but wasn't familiar with our software. And I said, come in, look at all these symptoms, and tell me everything that could cause this. And he looked at everything. He says, well, it sure looks like a memory overwrite to me. Well, we had eliminated a memory overwrite right from the jump. So we go in, and sure enough, we found one customer at one bank in Missouri that had created thousands upon thousands of payment batches with a single transaction in each batch, instead of one batch with thousands of transactions. And so every time that user logged in, that was it. Just that one user, and literally the fix was 5 minutes and the problem went away. But that went on for months. The point is that we were sort of in that routine of being a software company looking for software bugs, and we had very quickly eliminated other possibilities. We should have very early on been more mindful of the symptoms and been more cautious about what could cause those and not be so quick to dismiss those. And quite frankly, I could have brought in that individual the second time it happened instead of 3 or 4 weeks later. We have to be careful. We have to think about this idea of the numbing effect of routine and how we're aware of how we're going to go out and actually be looking for those opportunities for something special, something magical to happen. So anyway, how do you determine, how do you figure out if you're stuck in this autopilot numbing effect of routine? I would say here's a good way. You bring in a new employee. They're probably going to be a younger employee. Maybe they're a millennial. And so you bring them into one of the departments in your organization, and you're showing them your steps. You're showing them your process. Here's how we do these things. Here's this 6 or 7 step process. Okay, great. And so they raise their hand and they go, why do you do step 4? What's step 4? Why do we need to do that? Now, there are 2 ways that you can respond to this. So you're the manager showing this new employee. You can say, Jones, step 4 comes after step 3, and it's before step 5. This is how we do things here. Get to work. That's one way. Well, the other way you can say is, you know what? Let's take a look at step 4. Let's see if we can figure out exactly why we do step 4. Step 4 may be some regulatory or some, compliance issue that you have to do step 4. And so you can explain that to your new employee. Or you may find that you don't need step 4. That step 4 is no longer needed. Maybe it was put into place years ago, and you're still doing that procedure simply because that's what that procedure calls for. And so when you can identify these steps that you're doing that are no longer necessary, especially when new employees are asking about them, it does 2 very important things. Number 1, it shows the employee that you are actually listening, that you're not just going to be shut up and do your job, that you're saying, yeah, let's look at this. Here's fresh eyes coming in. They see our trees differently than we do in our forest. Let's see whether or not step 4. That's a big deal for millennials who come in and ask questions. They want to know that their input is valued, and if they see that you're taking action on that, they appreciate that. That's a big deal for them. So let's go back and review. There are 3 elements of metacognition, thinking about how we think. We have to identify autopilot and make sure that we recognize when we're in autopilot mode and shut it down. We're going to incorporate think time and put it on our calendars, and then stop reacting and move towards thoughtful response in terms of how we're actually creating the kinds of outcomes that we want. Now, there's a couple of things that we can talk about. A lot of times people will ask you about measuring. How are we going to measure innovation? Let's say we choose to be different. How are we going to measure innovation? Well, if you go out and create a new product or a new service, or you get into new markets, your sales will increase. You can measure it. If you're eliminating steps, you're actually reducing your costs. Profitability goes up, you can measure it. If you're increasing and enhancing the customer experience, then you're going to generate more referrals, more cross-sells, and you're going to measure and see how that moves the needle. Don't be afraid of being different. Be afraid of being the same as everyone else. So let's go back to where we started. We talked about these 5 products. And, these mistakes, what would our life be like without these mistakes? Let's think about it. Post-it notes are failed glue, right? Sweet and low is a coal tar derivative mistake. Play-Doh is the worst wallpaper cleaner ever invented. That's what it was supposed to be. Are you up to the challenge to create bad ideas? Are you willing to spend time to create bad ideas? Are you willing to be a failure, and that failure may be the seed that sparks innovation-driven growth in your organization? Are you so bold as to take up that challenge? For some of you in the room, the answer is no. No. But some of you, Some of you are starting to feel it. Some of you are saying, wait a minute, I can do this. I can innovate where I am. And so my challenge to you is that you be ready to stand right where you are, from the place where you are, and be prepared to innovate. Here's one big word of caution. One big word of caution. Never confuse Roundup with Rogaine. But always be prepared right where you are to come up with the ideas necessary to drive innovation-driven growth.